More reaction to how the Bucs looked against the Dolphins on Thursday without Tom Brady and their top four receivers. We speak with Robert Hainsey, Rachaad White, and Carmen Vitali. Let's go.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome to the Locked On Bucs Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. We thank all of you for not just making us your first listen or view of the day, but we thank all of you that joined us in all of our YouTube live chats while we were reacting to training camp. Appreciate each and every one of you. Of course, I am James Yarcho, joined by David Harrison. You can find his written work over at BucsGameDay.com. I'm at BucsNation.com, and you can follow everything else on Twitter at LockedOnBucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, and at DHarrison82.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Bucs podcast first listen or view of the day, maybe even your second view or listen of the day. James, on Thursday, I was watching the offense. We swapped, right? So Wednesday, I was watching defense. You were watching offense. And so on Thursday, I watched the offense. You watched the defense. And overall, I think it's pretty safe to say the Dolphins won day two.
I would concur.
Which some of our listeners and viewers are not going to be happy to hear that. But, you know, listen.
The Dolphins ones will.
The Dolphins, yeah. Shout out to all you Dolphins fans. Saw you on Twitter. Saw you in the comment sections. Appreciate you guys being here as well. Neither side was bad, right?
No.
So Wednesday was very competitive. I think Thursday was also very competitive. But for a lot of the reasons that the Bucs, that we declared the Bucs the winners in day one, were similar reasons why the Dolphins were winners in day two. There were some takeaways. Some scoring, some takeaways. Honestly, I mean, on the Bucs offensive field, they actually got into the end zone a couple of times, which is interesting, but not kind of they didn't have a whole lot of full-fledged like game situation drills. They did have like a 1 minute situation, which was interesting to watch them just kind of go through. But I think the Dolphins get the edge here on the scorecards. Like I said, no 2 minute drills on this one. There was a little bit of a 1 minute drill there at the end, but on the offensive side, of course, the Bucs didn't have Tom Brady, didn't have Mike Evans, didn't have Julio Jones, didn't have Chris Godwin for team drills, didn't have Russell Gage. Cam Brate didn't do the team drills. Rashad Perryman wasn't out there. So Dolphins fans, as much as we just congratulated you, realize like your squad went up against Bucs light. You know what I mean? Like this wasn't the Bucs at their full strength. It was Bucs light. So on the offensive side of the things, though, the ground game, right? That was kind of the biggest thing I was looking at. Like Blaine Gabbert, he came in, he had some good throws. He was off target a little bit. Kyle Trask, honestly, wasn't great, but he also wasn't terrible. And we saw some really bad stuff from Kyle, specifically on Sunday. Obviously, there was that now infamous Twitter clip that the Bucs put up and then took down,
right.
That our guy Croc over at Locked On NFL Draft got a hold of and kind of helped it stay alive anyway. So go Croc. But at the end of the day, the passing game definitely was limited, and I think it's interesting because we all know how great Tom Brady is, and we all obviously know there's a huge gap between Brady and Gabbert. In fact, we were leaving the facility, walking through the parking lot, and I said, like, you could really see the difference between Brady and Gabbert. And your son very sarcastically said, it's almost like there's a huge talent gap between Brady and Gabbert. Very true, very funny. I deserve it. But the deeper part of it is it's different to know it, it's different to see it. Because when Brady was on the field on Wednesday and you were watching the offense and I got to see him for the 2 minute drill, like Mike still wasn't there. Neither was Chris. Julio was out there, but Rashad Perryman still wasn't there. Russell Gage had left with his injury, and the offense still moved the ball. And they got into scoring range, and it really didn't look all that difficult, and there was a whole lot of effort. On Thursday, however, you were missing a lot of the same players, and now it's Blaine Gabbert at quarterback. And there was some struggling going on. You know what I mean? What I didn't like specifically is early on in the run game got bottled up pretty well by the Dolphins defense. So they came back, they made adjustments, they shifted some things, and you can tell the coaching had taken place. They came out, and then Ke'Shawn had those two really good runs that I mentioned on our live episode. If you didn't catch all those details, head back one episode and catch that. And then Gio came up with the play of the day. Like I said, a 35-ish yard touchdown run, which obviously was a great thing to see. Kenyon Barner eventually gets in the end zone as well. But edge protection, on blitzes, DBs were getting in very, very quickly. Would have been hellacious sacks. Quarterbacks would have been feeling those sacks, and it wasn't really until Rachaad White came in and had a really good blitz pickup. But those are just some of the notes and some of the goods, but still some of the drawbacks on why I give the Dolphins the win. Because even when the Bucs got something going, it was a lot of effort expended to get the little bit that they got going.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, this was Bucs light, right? This was the skill positions and the quarterback were the second teamers. Some were third teamers. You had, for the most part, the starting offensive line out there for the majority of the time, and that was another big test that we wanted to look at was how is this new interior facing up against the pass rush. We're going to get more into that in just a moment, but it is what it is, right? We're talking about joint practices. Bucs won day one, Dolphins win day two, and on my side of the field, of course, it was a little more obvious that the Dolphins won day two. Now, the kind of the reverse of what had happened over at your side of the field was the Dolphins really couldn't get anything going in the run game. Devin White looked really, really good in pursuit. So did KJ Britt when he was filling in for Devin White at that middle linebacker spot. And, some great edge rushes from not just Joe Tryon-Shoyinka and Shaq Barrett. Barrett had a sack during the drills, but also some corner blitzes. I mentioned my player of the day on our live episode was cornerback Rashard Robinson. He got to quarterback, and I don't have the name down again. It was the wrong page. Skylar Thompson. So the third string Dolphins quarterback, but he got sacked on back-to-back plays. One of those was a corner blitz by Robinson. It was a great play. But overall, you were talking about Grant Stewart. Blown coverage there led to an explosive play. It was a touchdown catch by one of their tight ends. I forgot to grab my notebook. Please forgive me. But it was a very ugly play. I mean, the guy was absolutely wide open, and it was just flat out a blown coverage. You had Jalen Waddle with a phenomenal leaping catch in the end zone in between Antoine Winfield and Mike Edwards. Great play by him. I mean, the coverage was good. They just flat out got beat by a great wide receiver. You had, again, the run defense looked really good. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, we did get a question about him, so I do want to talk about him for a moment. He is looking really good. He's looking really comfortable. Did get to the quarterback a couple of times, and it wasn't a blown dead sack, but it was one of those. It was close enough in real action, in a real game. He might have been able to disrupt things a little bit more. So he is continuing to look really good, improve, become more, like I mentioned, more comfortable, more kind of ready to take on this role, filling in for Jason Pierre-Paul.
There you go, becoming that disruptive force, right? I mean, JPP, that's what he provided his years with the Buccaneers, and then his years with the Giants. Before they were dumb and thought that he was washed and no longer.
Well, he can't play in a 3-4.
He can't play in a 3-4, absolutely not. So it's a good thing the Bucs didn't put him in a 3-4. Either way, look, Bucs won day one, but nobody in Bucs fandom, and I don't think any of the media outlets were necessarily going out there saying, "All right, let's plan the next the next boat parade for the Lombardi." So same thing. Bucs lost day two. I think we both agree on that, but it's not like we're talking about the Bucs, having a number 5 overall pick at the end of the day. It's every day is a little bit different day. Another time to compete. Somebody who's been competing on the field and doing very well for himself is Robert Hainsey. We had a chance to talk to him after practice Thursday, so you'll see that interview, and actually back-to-back it, Carmen Vitali, who spent some time with Hainsey and AQ Shipley in Arizona during the offseason. We also talked to her about a multitude of things. You'll hear what she had to say about Hainsey as well, and we're going to do all of that thanks to our friends over at Built.com. Built Bar Puffs. If you haven't tried those yet, you're depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys, and right now they've got cookie dough covered in chocolate because Built has done it again. A new puff bar, but this one with cookie dough chunks. It's like eating cookie dough without the hassle of having to make it. And of course, it's covered in 100% real chocolate. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories, and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein in them. So run to Built.com and snag a box for you and the family. Like all Built bars, The new bar is covered in 100% chocolate. It means they're healthy and tasty. And what's great about them is that they're made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently, and it provides tons of health benefits. You're going to love it. You're going to love all the flavors, all the puffs. So go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCKEDON15, and get 15% off your order. And that promo code is LOCKEDON15, all one word, at Built.com. Thanks again for making the Locked On Bucs podcast your first listen or your first view of the day. If you joined us for the live, your second view or your second listen of the day, we appreciate you greatly. We appreciate all of you, no matter what. The trenches have been a big topic of conversation for good reasons, because honestly, the NFL is won and lost in the trenches. Patrick Mahomes can't run all day. He can run most of the day, but he can't run all day. So if he's got no trench help, the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be in a very bad way. The starting interior line of the Buccaneers being completely different for week one of this season compared to last season. A lot of eyes have been there. Brady has always been thought that he is most susceptible to an inside pass rush. Everybody wants to push him up the middle, so that makes that even more of a concern. So it's important to get that interior right before the opening game against the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas for week one. Robert Hainsey has been filling that role. Shaq Mason, a combination really of Aaron Stinney and Nick Leverett have been kind of pairing up. It was Aaron Stinney on Thursday at running with the ones. That's what we expect to see on Saturday. But we spoke to Robert Hainsey about how he feels about his relatively new position, because this is a relatively new position for him playing center, but also to Carmen Vitali, who saw him working out and training during the offseason, and now she's catching back up with him as she was also in town for the joint practices with the Miami Dolphins. So now you're going to hear from Robert Hainsey and the Draft Network's Carmen Vitali.
It takes a special kind of person to play center because of not just the physical aspect, but the mental aspect. How do you feel you've been adapting to this position that's really still pretty new for you?
Yeah, it's definitely still pretty new. It's been about a year of it, but I think I'm well suited for it. My coaches in college told me I would be well suited for it, and I never knew how things were going to shake out. But the way they've gone over the last year, I feel like I've improved and grown a lot as a player and a man. So I have a good feel as to what it needs to be. Going against the different guys, different looks. This last 2 days has been really helpful. Practicing that communication and seeing things how I need to see them and getting communicated to the other four guys. So I think things are improving, advancing well, and I'm proud of that. But it's definitely still one day at a time, improving, going from there.
Carmen, last time we talked, you talked about being with Robert Hainsey during some of his off-season training programs, and that he was looking to compete for that starting left guard job. Yeah. Well, as fortune and fate would have it, unfortunately for Ryan, and everybody feels bad for him, of course, he's competing or has maybe the starting center job. How do you think he's doing in that position?
Yeah, I mean, that was like kind of the number one thing I wanted to check out and check in on him, because I got to see his training firsthand. He worked his butt off this offseason, did not take a vacation, nothing. So before OTAs, he was with AQ Shipley in Arizona. As soon as OTAs, minicamp wrapped up, he was back on a flight to Phoenix. And so getting to see kind of just the nuances and the stuff that goes into the training, and just working on fundamentals, but then also some of the more like refined technique that you don't really realize comes from offensive linemen. It was a really eye-opening experience. He's just worked his butt off, and then to see him here, you can tell that he's just been working, and he's a lot more comfortable in that center spot. His leverage is staying well. Like I've started to learn a little bit what to look for when you want, if that's a good rep, if that's a bad rep, and he's had more good reps than bad.
All right, great stuff, honestly, from both Robert Hainsey and Carmen Vitali. Thank you to both of them for joining us. But look, it's great to hear these things out of Robert Hainsey, that yes, he is still learning this new position. Yes, this all still is a work in progress for him, but how comfortable he has become taking on this role with Ryan Jensen out for however long that may be. So he's going to get some, I would assume, and I know what they say about assuming, but, Todd Bowles has said that, most of the starters probably aren't going to see any action on Saturday. We kind of hope that Robert Hainsey is going to be one of those starters that will see action, right, just to get those live game reps. In the joint practices certainly help, but you can't replicate game snaps for practice snaps. Like the two are not interchangeable. So it's going to be really important for him to get as much of that extra work as possible as he prepares to be the starter for week one against the Dallas Cowboys. And we've said it all week long. We've noticed it all week long. We made a point to watch it, that he really does look like a genuine starting center in the NFL. He looks like he's fully capable of taking on this role. So he can't replace Ryan Jensen. There's no question about it. Yeah. But this isn't the talent gap between Brady and Gabbert, right? This is a guy that can come in and get the job done.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, our last deep dive into practice, there was a comment about, well, you guys missed all the sacks that they would have taken if it wasn't practice, they couldn't be hit and all. So it's not that we missed it, it's that we weren't watching it, because you can't watch everything, right? We're watching the wide receivers for the most part and how they manipulated coverage, the running backs and stuff like that. So our eyes aren't in the backfield, they're in the field of play. Well, on Thursday, my eyes were squarely on the line of scrimmage. Like from snap to the finish of the play, I watched the line of scrimmage. Now, once the ball got out of there, if it was handed off, kind of watched the run fits and the run blocking and all that stuff from the defense and offense and everything. So my eyes would move then. But yeah, every single offensive snap that team took when Robert Hainsey and that first team offensive line were on the field, I was watching the three men in the inside of that offensive line to see how they did. And they did very well. They held up very well. It doesn't mean there were no sacks, but it just means that they did a very good job. Now, when the second team, third team came on, like things got a little bit hairier, you know what I mean? Kyle Trask took probably about 2 or 3 sacks, you know what I mean, if it was a live game. But yeah, going up against teammates, you're going to that like 70%, right? Maybe something like that. Going up against the Dolphins in a joint practice, you're probably going about 90%. But then when the game comes, you're going 100%. You know what I mean? And everybody's out there looking to make money for themselves or put tape down. So yeah, I would like to see Robert Hainsey. I would like to see Aaron Stinney, Shaq Mason, Nick Leverett, maybe Tristan Wirfs, kind of let him sit. Maybe even Donovan Smith, let him take a seat. But you would like to see the ones at least get a little bit of burn together, and then maybe even see, Aaron Stinney. But at the same time, I mean, look, out behind Aaron Stinney or behind Robert Hainsey at the center position, it gets a little bit sticky. So maybe, that's where the coaches come in. You got to balance getting reps and experience and keeping guys healthy, because you definitely don't want to lose the guy that you have right now.
Yeah, and it's also really encouraging what Carmen says, because, of course, Carmen had watched Robert working out with AQ Shipley over the summer, and the growth that she said that she's seen from him in just a short period of time, that speaks wonders about how far along he has come. So really encouraging things out of the interior of the line. But, David, we had a YouTube question during our live stream on Thursday about Mike Edwards. And I realized I talked about how the secondary struggled a little bit, to put it mildly, on Thursday. But the question was if we thought he'd have a hard time holding on to the starting safety job. So watching him on Thursday, he looked fine. He really did. The defense as a whole didn't play great. And I obviously didn't have my eyes locked in on Edwards the whole time. A lot of times I was watching the trenches. I was watching the linebackers. And then it was a lot of when the secondary would swap out, I was paying attention to Rashard Robinson. I was paying attention to D. Delaney. I was paying attention to some of those guys that may be on the bubble to see kind of if any of them were emerging over one another. We know Edwards is going to make the team. Winfield's going to make the team. I also tried to keep an eye on who was on Tyreek Hill just to see how they were changing that up a little bit. But no, I don't think Edwards is going to have a problem at all holding on to that starting job. And some of the things, David, that you noticed, and I saw a little bit of it too, was the fact that, they're using Logan Ryan and Keanu Neal in a little bit more diverse ways and moving them all over the field rather than strictly as true safeties.
Absolutely. So Mike Edwards, looks like he's in pretty good control of his position. So obviously how the rest of training camp preseason really develops and how Todd Bowles mixes up. You guys know that's what makes Todd Bowles the best defensive coordinator. He's a head coach, but still running the defense in the National Football League. It's his creativity and his ability to get the looks that he wants to get. Another guy putting up some good looks, Rachaad White, putting a lot of good things on tape. Heavy running back competition, but he's right in the mix as a rookie. We're going to hear from him and talk about him in the next segment of the Locked On Bucs podcast.
Wrapping things up here on the Locked On Bucs podcast. David, we talked a lot about the trenches in the last segment. A direct result of the ability of those trenches is the running game. And, the success of the running backs is something that you noticed on Thursday. They all performed really, really well. And we've mentioned in our live show how good Gio looked on Thursday. Ke'Shawn Vaughn was your player of the game. Rachaad White is out there leveling blitzers, putting his head down and getting the job done in pass protection. We had the chance actually to catch up with Rashad about this running back room, with these guys pushing one another and really having to be their absolute best on every single play that they get.
Yeah, Leonard Fournette, obviously the established pro at this point in time, but Ke'Shawn Vaughn sneak out there. He's been sneaking through the line. Giovanni Bernard has been doing some good things. Those guys motivate you and help you push even further into trying to get better.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. When you got a great group of running backs in your room, and everyone pushes each other, and everybody consistent, and you know what you kind of getting in and day out, so it makes you got to come with it. You got no choice.
All right, so again, special shout out to Rachaad White's daughter for joining the show, and then allowing Rachaad White to also join her on her first appearance not last, but first appearance on the show. But yeah, look, Rashad, we talked about a few things. There's a small sample size there, but really did have, honestly, like that play alone, not as electric as the Gio play, not as obviously going to get the fan reaction and everything, but when you really kind of look at where the Buccaneers offense was struggling at that point during the practice, and I talk about pressure coming from the edge, from the corners, from the safeties, not the edge rushers particularly. They were eating up blocks and then letting their DBs come in and finish off the play. And I tweeted out that, the Bucs offense needed to do a better job of getting these blitzes picked up, namely from the running back position. And very next snap after I hit send is when Rachaad White just completely stood up Eric Rowe. And after the fact, Eric Rowe had some words for him. Rachaad White squared up on him, dropped his mouthpiece, and, they were talking. I asked Rashad what he said and what Eric said, and he said that Eric simply asked him what year he was in the league. I'm sure that's exactly what happened.
Yes.
But look, your rookie running back is about that if somebody wants to bring it to him. But I think the biggest thing is that, he's getting comfortable in that competition within them. They're all pulling for each other, supporting each other, but they're also pushing each other to get better every single day.
Yeah, and I can't say enough good things about what I saw out of, not just all the running backs, but Rashad in particular. It really is encouraging to see how well he is doing at this point in time, because you go back over the last couple of years, especially as long as we've been doing this show, and you take a look at some of the rookie running backs that they've had. Ronald Jones wasn't this far along at this stage.
Yeah.
Jeremy McNichols certainly wasn't this far at this stage, and Ke'Shawn Vaughn wasn't this far along at this stage in his NFL career. So what we're seeing out of Rachaad White has been nothing short of just fantastic. And the fact that there's still room to grow there is really, really encouraging for not just him, but the future of the Buccaneers, depending on how long Lenny stays around. I know he signed a 3-year deal, but there's some outs in there for either side. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So with that, David, we are going to get out of here, but some quick news real fast. We know there's a game on Saturday. I will be in the midst of traveling home. David will be at the game. Going to try to drop a quick reaction episode after that game, but there may not be the opportunity for you to do so inside of Ray J. So just know we will be recording Monday's episode prior to the game. So if you come back Monday and there hasn't been any reaction to the game yet, that is because our travel schedules just really don't allow for that. And we will bring a full reaction after we have had time to sit down and actually watch the game at the latest. That will be dropping on Tuesday. So just a heads up for everybody. Monday, we're going to kind of do our week at training camp wrap up. A couple of other sound bites we might be able to drop in from some people that we talked to and didn't have time to get to those this week. But we want to thank each and every one of you for sticking with us this week, joining our live feeds, commenting on YouTube, sending in the emails and the voicemails while we were here. Greatly appreciate each and every one of you for making us your first or second listen or review of the day. But now you need to make your next listen the Locked On Fantasy Football. Find the intellectual fantasy expert Vinny Iyer, who brings over 20 years of NFL expertise and a unique angle to give you the moves no one else has. Get ready for your fantasy draft with Locked On Fantasy Football. Check out everything David's doing over at BucsGameDay.com. Check out my work at BucsNation.com. Make sure you're following on Twitter at LockedOnBucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, and at DHarrison82. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire those cannons. We thank you so much for joining us right here at Locked On Bucs.